All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Mike,
I'm Brian,
and this is what got our attention.
at least this week.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, how was your burgers today?
Actually, pretty good.
Yeah. Oh,
By
and
the way,
it is an adult podcast, adult video. We might drop some various cuss words occasionally, and we will be drinking during this. So, I mean, I got my Cuba Libre. I guess it's Bacardi, so it's really Puerto Rican Libre, but rum and
I have
Coke.
drinking water. I already had a few, so trying to cut back. It's still a work day.
Yeah, clearly, because we're professional.
Totally. I guess we'll go ahead and roll into the first one. So the first thing that caught my attention this week was that I don't know if you guys have saw, but some of the PlayStation prices for PS5 actually leaked. Actually, looking at an article here with Tech Radar, it actually seemed to have leaked twice, which is pretty odd. But I mean, who knows? It's a rumor, right? But as quoted here, it says first a look at Danish retailer Photech, Frotex, I guess you could say, is listing the price as $1,043
They're
US.
not going to sell too
And
many
then
at that much.
right, which would the PS4 price obviously at launch was $399. But we also saw another posting which was roughly 396, which compared to the PS4 would be, as it says, an absolute steal. So the question is, right now, basically, what price will it be? We just don't obviously know. But at this point, we can only suspect what we think, and hopefully, the prices won't be too terrible.
Yeah, and I tell you, like the second price, which was sounded like a little bit under $400, that seems a little bit more reasonable with what I would expect. But with like that kind of range, over $1,000, which I'm sorry, I mean people freaked out when what was it, the PS3.
It's PS3, yeah.
Yeah, and they were saying like, $600, and like if you really want this, you're gonna go out and get another job, and you know,
Exactly.
yeah.
I don't know if
So
I'm dedicated enough like that to
not for
go
$1,000,
buy
but
another console.
I
Of
think
course,
that's
we say that in most of gaming rigs and VR and such.
yeah, exactly. That is true. But I think with this, 1,050 to like almost $400 price range between these two different leaks, just goes to show you that they're leaks. I mean, there's just not going to be really all that much veracity to this until Sony themselves tells us, hey, this is what it's going to be.
Right. The interesting fact was also covered in Tech Radar's article as well, is the fact that Microsoft still has their console wanting to come out, and if these are potentially actual real prices, they could have a good jump on price points in the future of what they want to potentially put their console up for. So
Yeah, but
it's interesting. We'll see what's going to happen. I don't know if there's anything actually to this, but it's always great to speculate.
yeah, agreed. In other PlayStation 5 news, PlayStation did an event where they showed a lot of upcoming games, some gameplay as well. Not a lot of release dates actually, which was kind of interesting. But they did what I think was a better showing than Xbox, and I primarily play Xbox, so I thought it was interesting. But one of the first things they showed, and was one of the most exciting, was Spider-Man Miles Morales, a
Absolutely.
game. Yeah, and he's been a part of the series just for years. People have been waiting for a video game based on him, and they got it. They got that trailer, and it was out there, and then within days was overshadowed by this VP, and this is from a Newsweek article. Sony's VP head of European business, Simon Rudder, told the Telegraph, well, I guess you could call it an expansion, an enhancement to the previous game. There's a substantial Miles Morales component, which is the expansion element, but also within the game, there's been major enhancements to the game and game engine. Obviously, deploying some of the major PlayStation 5 technology and features. So that's what, Newsweek quoted as him telling the Telegraph. And the internet went crazy because they were like,
as it should.
Yeah, they're like, oh, this is a DLC to the original Spider-Man game that was on, the PlayStation 4.
Old bait and switch.
Right. Or this is like, just, either just an expansion to it. And hey, I quite quickly, Jason Schreier, and this is reported by Eurogamer, but Jason Schreier had gone out there and tweeted and said, hey, it's not an expansion, it's a standalone game. And Insomniac Games themselves came out and said, hey, their next adventure is going to be in the Spider-Man universe, and that, it's going to be a full standalone game, and that you're going to be able to enjoy this character with. They did say it was going to be a shorter game. I think Uncharted Lost Legends was the example that they gave where, you have a shorter installment in the series of games. And sure, absolutely, they put in a lot of work of creating that New York cityscape and creating the Spider-Man.
And it looked fantastic. It's one of probably the best Spider-Man games since I remember originally, like on the original PlayStation. Which,
and they nailed. They totally nailed the swing mechanic, and that was the big thing that everybody was looking for. And the combat, similar to some of the other games like that, the Batman games is one of the ones that they said, but still brought its own Spidey type flavor to it. So sure, they're not going to throw all that out. They're going to reuse that engine and make the engine better, and they're going to reuse the city, but it's not an expansion. It's they've reused some assets, they've made the assets better, and it's still a whole new game.
Right.
So that's a little bit about the Spider-Man Miles Morales thing that's been going on. So what about games in general? What have you been looking at?
So I actually came across Polygon article about a game called Among Trees, and I don't know if you guys are interested in, but one of the big things that I like currently is a lot of survival type games. I get lost in building and the survival and crafting mechanics.
Don't Starve.
Big fan of like The Forest, and also Long Dark, which is also another very cold type survival type game that you feel like you're actually cold when you're playing. But this game actually caught my eye, and after actually checking out the Polygon article and noticing it's early access, I actually went to Epic and actually picked it up. It was fairly cheap. I think it's on sale right now, and I got it for an extra coupon or something. So didn't pay a whole lot for it, but I got to check it out today for like an hour. And I will say it's definitely early access. As they advertise, it's not supposed to be anything else than what they're saying here. But basically, right now, it's pretty stable for me for at least the hour I played. I didn't have any actual major glitches or anything. One of the neat features I thought was cool was that at the very top there was a press F2 to submit your any kind of feedback or bugs that you may find. And it's integrated into the UI, so you click the button, you submit your notes. So I kind of felt myself doing that, which kind of made me feel engaged because I'm actively helping testing, doing the beta or the alpha, pre-alpha that they're in.
I appreciate.
So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate when they have something like that where it's built into the game engine itself, and you're not having to go to a forum. I mean, granted, if I'm in an early alpha or beta or something like that, yeah, sure, I'm going to try to go ahead and go to a forum and provide feedback. But
exactly, but that's just an extra step that you kind of have to go through, which is sometimes I'd love to do that, but I just don't have the time to think about that after I get finished playing the game for a few hours or whatever. But I definitely say, being a fan of, like I said, like The Forest, Long Dark, and I mean, I've even played multiple hours of DayZ survival kind of game. It's just, this is one of the new things I'm kind of interested in looking into. We'll see what happens after a few months, years. Roadmap looks pretty good. I mean, who knows at this point, but so far it seems interesting. I'll probably maybe even stream it this week coming up.
Cool. Sounds very interesting. So one of the other things that got my attention recently, and this is tangentially gaming news. It isn't necessarily about a game itself, but it was something that, has something to do with games. And that's, at least in the world of sports, things in the sports world are starting back up. So, we're starting to have soccer games again.
Well, jobs are starting to open back up. So
yeah, exactly. NBA is talking about starting some games again. And even, wrestling, obviously it started back up, and there's been some things that people have been learning because of the Rona, they've been trying to limit things like letting 30,000 fans into an area and keeping them close.
Is a good point. I mean, you'll see that, and we may even get some other stuff later, but you can definitely see that nowadays. Like, it's not, we have to find different ways to try to, accomplish the same thing that we're used to. But yeah. So.
Exactly. Cause, it's just not going to work that way. So, right. One of the things I heard about was wrestling started it up again, and they had empty stadiums, or at least empty rooms, and people were watching it and were just like thrown off because of the silence. And that was one of the first things that they addressed. And for instance, on CBS Sports,
awkward.
Yeah, awkward. Exactly. CBSSports.com, reported that, NBA is talking about starting back up again, and they're actually thinking about taking audio from the 2K NBA game and pumping that into the feed so that they have crowd audio from the game to be able to like fill in that silence and everything while these NBA games are going on.
Right. To cover the squeaking, because God knows that it's going to be just a complete mess of just squeak, 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 and then just silence
and grunts.
So I don't know how I'd be able to even play as a player. I don't even know how I would handle that, but
right.
They're definitely going to have to do something. It's an interesting idea.
And it's not just the audio itself. Where I actually had first heard of this was that soccer or football was starting back up again. And they were not only thinking about bringing in sound, but they were also thinking about like filling in the empty stadiums. And they basically turned to a company that puts this mosaic background over the seats to simulate a crowd. I mean, they're not trying to do like CGI crowds with faces or anything like that. They're just trying to like do this mosaic. And I've seen the video of it, and you're focused in on the players. And
they should do like Rocket League and just have little circles as heads bopping up and down. The crowd.
It's not all that different from that because it's like these squares that are kind of moving, and the video is fascinating. But apparently, while that's what they were planning and what they thought was going to be a really great idea, apparently some people didn't like it as much. They started tweeting out different things about where, it looked awkward because they were doing colors that were supposed to represent flags that didn't look quite right. They were tweeting out that, hey, apparently they're putting in crowds from the Super Nintendo days,
Right.
But in reality, I mean, looking at the video myself, I didn't think it was really all that bad. Certainly it's better than just having the blank crowds that we had. And, and they do a little bit of motion with it, like I was saying, so that, you get this kind of peripheral vision of like what a crowd moving might be a little bit, and being out of focus, like the crowd should be in the focus. They're not the focus of what this is.
Well, I mean, even if you look at like, even any of the new Madden things, like even those are pretty, like if you look at the crowd, like they're pretty bad. I mean, to be honest, yeah, they kind of resemble people, but I mean, ultimately, are you really watching the crowd the whole time? No, you're playing the game. So, and just like in real sports, like they're going to be watching the people on the field. And it's just the aesthetic of seeing, people in the crowd or hearing the noise, especially for the players. I think that's what the biggest thing is. So, I mean,
yeah. And I think,
is it the right thing to do? Is it, or not the right thing, I guess, is it
it's a good start,
the best scenario? I mean, no, we could have people in the crowd, but
hey,
I
at
don't
least
think that's a good idea right now.
at least they're trying, which is definitely important. And I think the other thing about it too is, they're experimenting with this and they may have not found what works best. In fact, some of the early complaints that I saw on this was where they just had the mosaic and not the crowd noise. And I think it's going to be the combination of both of these that is really where we're going to see how it works the best. So, I mean, that's what we're doing in the world of sports. But of course, there's other games coming along this summer season.
Well, actually, it's a good point. So, going along the lines of the whole coronavirus kind of keeping people out of mass groups of people, as we said before, another thing we saw this week is that Steam, as always, is always doing something. And they have a Steam Game Festival this year, Summer Edition, which is interesting because what it is, it looks to be a platform where you get to go, get to watch live demos, watch betas, watch different things happening, but from developers actually playing the game, kind of explaining the game as as they're showing it to you, demoing it.
So
it seems very familiar, right?
No, I mean, so this is not a summer Steam sale?
Correct. This is not the Steam sale. This is actually a game festival where you can virtually see games, play demos, have the developer there. They're actually even on here. They've even specified that there will actually be live chats, AMAs, and live streams of different games from the developer aspect where you get to talk to the developer. And it sounds very familiar with.
So it sounds like you're talking about an E3 replacement here.
Almost, pretty much. I mean, is it going to be the scale of E3? Not necessarily. Most people probably pass this up. Probably.
Well, I mean,
they're not getting free games, so
there's no E3 this year.
The start, yeah. So for the start of it, I think it's a great idea. We'll see what actually comes out of it. We may even see some great games come out of it the rest of the year. But it was just something interesting I saw, and I thought that was pretty neat. So like I said, we'll see what happens with that. But pretty good idea so far.
Sure. And I mean, again, I think it's nice that they're, starting something a little bit different when you don't have the E3 that we're used to that is talking about games.
Right. We'll say E3, but that's just one of them, really. I mean, you're thinking, because a couple of years ago, everything split off. So Bethesda had to have their own. Everybody had to have their own. And now we're at the point where nobody can have any. We have to do it kind of virtually. So there's been some talks about other companies doing things like this. And actually, I think you're going to bring one up.
Yeah. I mean, conventions have been left and right being canceled this year. And one of the conventions
I'm a huge fan for Dragon Con here in Atlanta, but we are not going to go this year, regardless of if they're having it or not. So.
And one of the conventions that was going to be going on the same time as Dragon Con that I usually go to is PAX West. And back in April, they said, well, PAX West is still going on. And everybody's like, everything's being canceled. That doesn't make any sense. And one of the big rumors at the time, which had actually some merit to it because we saw it live happening with other events, is that when you're doing a convention, especially something that is a set date every year, or at least a set holiday, Labor Day, that, they're booking out the venues, the convention centers, the hotels, everything way in advance. And, they're putting down their deposits and all this stuff. And the thing is if they cancel it, they lose their deposit. They lose all their money.
Exactly. And that's a big thing with any convention. Like, why would you risk your money and your time to do something like that if you don't even know if it's going to happen or not?
Yeah, regardless of size, regardless of scope. We were seeing concerts that had been booked out that canceled. And one of the things that they said is,
I had one today that I couldn't go to that was refunded. So
yeah, and a lot of times they're like, the city canceled it, so we're canceling this. And that's where, some of it started getting put together is, if they cancel it, if the person or the organization putting on the convention cancels it, well, then they lose their money. They lose all.
Right.
But if the city comes in and says, whoa, no, we're having too many problems here. You cannot gather that many people. You got to cancel this. Well, then, then insurance kicks in. or other things that are protecting, these deposits. So then, the people putting on the convention, they get the deposit money back. The people that were the venues, they, have insurance like, force majeure happened, and, they get their money back. So that was one of the things thought of why they weren't announcing that PAX West was canceled yet. And, we're not part of the show staff, so we're not going to know for certain. But sure enough, just a few days ago, they came out and said, hey, by the way, yes, unfortunately, PAX West and PAX Australia are going to be canceled. And in its place is going to be PAX Online.
PAX Online?
PAX Online. So what they're going to do is and there was actually hints about this beforehand. They had said, hey, if we do cancel, we're trying to come up with something. And that's probably why they waited so long to make this announcement, is because
that makes sense.
They're just putting this together. And it's a very interesting concept, because they're going to do as much of what we've come to know as PAX, but put it all online. The panels are going to be broadcast online. The esports components of it are going to be online. They're even trying to do something along the expo hall. Now, the expo hall, people have been to PAX, know what I'm talking about here. It is like Las Vegas Strip for nerds.
Right. Exactly. It's
amazing.
I would say there's even some people who probably won't even attend conventions like this or any other, just because of the sheer crowd. It's just tough. It's hard to, especially depending on the venue. If it's hard to navigate, it's just tough.
Yeah. And you have the crowds. So one of the nice things about this being online is no crowds, no lines. You show up for what you just tune in to the channel. They got 3 channels that'll be going simultaneously, and you just show up to the channel that you want to. One of the nice things about it is, since they're essentially combining PAX Australia with PAX West, which is Seattle,
right,
2 different sides of the globe, they have people that want to present things on both sides of the globe. So they're going to be running these streams on 3 channels 24 hours a day for 9 days in a row.
24 hours a day?
24 hours a day.
9 days? What is this?
9 days. It's yeah.
Usually 4 days, and you're going to talk about 9 days now?
Yeah, and they're just going to have 9 days of content. And again, that makes sense for the panels, because no lines. You just going to, okay. So a regular PAX at any one given time, when you go to see a panel, there's 5 or 6 other panels that are going on at the same time. And it's very frequent that you want to see more than one of those.
Exactly. And then what line do you want to spend your 4 hours in waiting to see if you can even get in? And you have another one that you potentially could have gotten in, but you missed it. So definitely know that feeling.
Or you really want to go to this one, but it's in one of the theaters that's being streamed online, so you can see the VOD later. So instead you go to this other one, and you catch up on the video on demand later on the other one. So, these are the decisions that you make when you're going live. Well, here you got only 3 channels. So there's only 3 going on at any one time, which spreads out the panels over a longer time, which is how they can get to some of this 24 hours. But on top of that, you don't have to choose anymore. Not only is there no line, but you can see the one, and you can go back and see the videos on demand for the other ones.
Yep.
So, you can consume as little or as much content as you want during this whole process.
And the bar is open because
the bar's always open. Which things like PAX East, and I support what they did. They stopped pretty much all alcohol sales within PAX East years ago. This last PAX East, they did have a couple exceptions, but I'm telling you, with cosplayers, and which are, I cosplay myself, cosplayers and immature people who are drinking do not mix. And the immature people who are drinking need to not drink when they're around cosplayers, because it's just not good.
So the thing is, that's a good point to bring up too, with being everything online. One of the parts that, like I said, I mentioned earlier, like Dragon Con, I go to is because of the cosplay. Like getting able to see the people who have spent their hours and hours and months, and weeks and everything to just dress up, just to show off, their talents and things. So I guess, I mean, I know they're going to do Twitch streaming like that for certain artists. They'll cover some things, but that is definitely something that you'll be missing from the actual virtual experience,
Yeah,
as opposed to like physically being somewhere.
absolutely. That is definitely, I mean, meeting new people while you're just walking around, is not going to be part of this. A lot of the cosplay, I mean, I don't even know if they're going to have any panel that, I'm sure they're going to have panels about, making cosplay and stuff like that. They almost always do, but I don't think they're going to have any like cosplay contests, which you could do. I mean, people could put in video submissions,
Right.
but I don't know
It'd be
if they're
kind of
going to
hard
have
to
anything like that.
judge stuff like that, at least contest wise. I mean, you could do a showcase, like just showing off.
Yeah.
But usually it's like the tangible, being able to review someone's cosplay, see the actual work they put in, flipping the material over. Did they actually work on the back? Like that's something that a lot of the judges look for, and you wouldn't be able to really be able to determine that from virtual. So
Yes,
it's
down to the stitching and
right.
things like. So yeah,
So it's going to be different. But I mean, hey, it's better than nothing. It's at least a good start. And if going forward, if maybe some other of these cons that are potentially having to cancel can figure it out, maybe try to join in on this virtual train right now. Maybe good for the future.
yeah, and then there's one other major difference, and I kind of touched on it before, but didn't kind of got sidetracked by a couple other topics. But it's it's the expo floor. The expo floor is you can't simulate that with. I mean, okay, we don't have to wait in line for 2-3 hours to play a game, obviously. But in general, with no expo floor, how do you play the games?
Exactly.
That's one of the main things that pays for PAX is the exhibitors paying for booth space to come in and show their wares. It's advertising for them, clearly.
Right.
And some of that can be handled by panels like the D&D panels, are paid by Wizards of the Coast. Cards Against Humanity comes in and does their panel. So all those can be online, and that's fine. But the expo floor was the big question. And interestingly enough, they're trying to like simulate the best they can with the digital world by going out to these exhibitors and saying, okay, instead of booth space, we'll give you some time to like show some stuff on a panel, sure, but can you provide us a demo? Can you give us something that people can download and play your game as if they were there on the expo floor?
Yep. And that's really going to be up to the developer. Because I mean, that's a lot of work. Usually when, you've been to plenty and I've been to plenty, but like when you go see these kind of people playing, these people are prepared for that one demo that they can show you how to play because they know where all the bugs are at that they can, show you. So having to prep something that quick, that can be challenging, but I'm sure some of them can do that. And that would be really neat if they could at least do that this time, just to have something that people play. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's what got our attention this week. If you're listening to the podcast, you can check out our podcast live with video on our Twitch channels. That's Phoenix Nova. It's with 2 N's for Phoenix. And I'm Xycia, Xycia, on Thursday nights at 8:30 on Thursdays. So if you like what you heard, please feel free to follow us on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and feel free to drop us a message at goa@sasgaming.com. So until next week, you guys have a great day. Take care.